Well, hello everyone. It's like you talk to you here to talk to you about is like Matthew's word afraid is talking about is that if most of us knowing about is like the word afraid it is talking about the things that we're afraid of, just like with me that I may be afraid of a few things it is such as one of those things of course is maybe is by what you call us knowing about is like maybe showing you maybe if I can remember it at this time, what my handwriting looked like at this time, or anything like that, anything related to anything from a couple of years ago to something that maybe I can do, now it is, such as like what you call it's like what I'm talking about is like you're talking about is like you're talking about is like what this coloring right here that is like what from my computer here and which most of us would probably think about that yeah if we ever have a fear about knowing about it's like that yeah if we're going to be getting on a computer that maybe that maybe it's not ours or whatever you call it fear that maybe the grandpa or whoever that is going to get mad at you or something but anyway this right here of course, is a coloring that I went ahead and did. Of course, is talking about fears, say of a swimming pool. It is, and most of us would probably think about that. Hey, this story, of course, was based on see, quite a few different water parks. It is, but you got right here is my mom and dad right here, and then of course use my sisters. And this coloring right here takes place back a couple of years ago. It is that it shows right here is that right here is me right here, and of course it's like go ahead and add some details right here. And maybe I don't know if I would have any type of sunburn or anything like that, say on my back or anything, but I think a couple of times I may have gotten sunburn whenever I didn't bother to put on sunscreen. It was, but anyway, that you have right here is a photo is like a little a drawing right here of me that of course whenever I was in school if I would be talking about this I don't know what my grade would be like back then. I would have been about maybe 4'8" something like that. You're right on 4'8". But anyway, but basically I drew right here is a water slide, and you got right here is a water slide. You got somebody right there. It's like say on the water slide, and of course you got right here is somebody swimming, and you got right here is the floats. It's like a lot of times if you're going to a swimming pool, a lot of people like playing with the floats. One year it was at I think it would have back about 1992 and 93 and 90 late 96 and 7 it was is knowing about that family when you went to a water park and one time that I got on a water slide and I can remember sliding down the water slide it was and just knowing about that the fact about that going down the water slide I think it was on a float or something and hit the water quite hard to where that I think it's like I think the word I described is blacked out or maybe spaced out or whatever that, water hit the water hard enough. Most of us would probably know, that kind of feeling it is. It's like if you're going down a water slide, is it knowing about that view whenever you spaced out that the water hits you hard enough like a wave like an ocean wave it is that more likely that it's like knowing about you're kind of stunned about what happened. But I remember that whenever I was at the water park, it was is knowing about I hit the water hard enough to where that I remember my parents, of course, that they did more than just, of course, drew them staying there, but on the other hand too, that knowing about that we were having fun there, and then all of a sudden it took I think maybe a few seconds or so just to wonder if I was all right, and I think I told them something like, "I'm not going on that water slide again," but anyway, and they, of course, anybody would have wondered. It's like, why is like that? Knowing about that, you go on there once and you don't want to go on it again. It is, but other than that, really, I never really explained that, to really to anybody about, why I stopped doing something, why I didn't want to go on that ride again, whatever. And I don't know if there was ever a time to where I ever said, I didn't want to eat cotton candy anymore or something like that. Because I've had it a couple times, and of course it's pretty good. But on the other hand, too, that knowing about is like that. Yeah, and then I remember one year that I came home with stomach cramps. Apparently, that they said that if you're going to drink soda or anything like that and then go swimming, I think if you're going to eat and then go swimming, something like that, and then you would have stomach cramps. I remember one time I had stomach cramps whenever I was young, and just knowing about that sometimes that they hurt, especially like knowing about that. Yeah, that whenever you bathe, if you're going to be showering or taking a bath, and a lot of times you won't experience any cramps, but if you're going to go swimming, then more likely you may experience some cramps. It is. But anyway, that you have right here is me right here is me, Matthew, and of course that you got right here is my hair, and then of course whenever you get all wet, that sometimes it's like what you call like a brown type color it is. But anyway, I know I was afraid of the water a lot of times whenever I was young, and whenever I was a young, I guess you'd say young fellow. It is that back whenever I was about 4 or 5 years old, that I can remember that they had a little swimming pool. My mom, parents, had a mom and dad, my parents, had a swimming pool in the backyard where we can go swimming in. But of course, if you go to like those city pools, a lot of times they would be about 4 feet, and one part will be about 8 feet. So you got right, 8 feet right there. And I was thinking, I'm like knowing about that, yeah, that you see people in the pools, and then the next thing you know, you see them in the pools, and go ahead and say pools, but just knowing about that, yeah, that you see people in the pools playing around with their floats and stuff like that. That I remember that that I would wear floats a lot of times during the times that I would be in the pool swimming. It was, and people would probably think about that. Come on, jump in, have some fun, join us on a splash team or something like have a splash, splish splash. I'm taking a bath. Most of us have heard that song before, but most of us probably think about for splish splash, and of course that you see people inside the pool right there, and then with the floaty it is, and just knowing about that. Hey, that come on, join the splish splash fun it is, and I once or twice, it's like knowing about that that maybe you want to go down a water slide, or as you say, or if you want to go ahead and go down, and it's like get in there with the floaty, or maybe get some swimming lessons. I remember that place called the YMCA, and I think there was the Recplex also, and I think Wapple Horse Water Park, other types of water parks. Go ahead and maybe write that down. It's like for water parks it is, but water park. But other water parks that may be around a city or county limit is maybe around town or something like that that you may be familiar with. But the ones that I remember that we used to go to, that I can't remember the name of it, but on the other hand too, that knowing about one water park that we did go to, that they had a slide there, and if I can remember right, that I think we only went there maybe once or twice, and that was it. I think due to the fact because either long drive or maybe because that incident knowing about I didn't like the water slide or whatever it was. But since then, and then we were going to a Wapple Horse water park, and then we were also going to another water park. I think St. Peter's, and I think Chesterfield. I don't know if we went to one there, but anyway, about the whole part about Matthew's word afraid is talking about it's like the things that you will be afraid of. It's like especially if it things that one of the things I would be afraid of is course is swimming, and a lot of times to think about is that knowing about with me that I whenever I was raised with my family, it was a lot of times it seems like that my teachers and of course counselors or whoever would always usually think that me is like afraid that knowing about that with my medical condition, of course with my IEP report, just knowing about hey that he was born, let's say, with this disability. He had problems whenever he was born, such and such, and just knowing about the fact about it seems like whenever I was a kid, that a lot of my family members and friends, especially my family members, would a lot of times would give me attention, and a lot of times I used to always, think to my parents it was, especially maybe my mom and my dad, or maybe my teacher it was. It's like quit, quit, feel, a lot of times I would have that nervousness and this knowing about that they would always seem like they would be babying me around. It was that they would be babying me around, and then on the other hand too, that they would always think about, oh, hey, I heard about that whole incident up there at the water park or anything like that. Oh, well, we read your medical papers and about you were diagnosed with this type of disorder, whatever it is. But on the other hand too, that knowing about that, yeah, that if you're going to have issues, of course, better knowing about the fact about you're not like anybody else. You're chicken-legged or whatever you call it. You're scrawny, little squiddo or whatever. And but on the other hand too, to knowing about was a lot of people, probably a lot of doctors probably say that it's not true. Just knowing about the fact about that's just the way it is, and knowing about to show say courage, to show type of courage about yourself is knowing about showing people is of course is what you can do. And so far as the word for afraid is knowing about talking about is like the things that they say if you were born, is like knowing about like with my mom told me it's like born, it's like knowing about if you were the one or the only son. If you were one or the only son, is like talking about is like if you were one or the only son. And then on the other hand too, that knowing about, hey, that if you were one or the only son, is to think about is that the things that to be staying up for what you're afraid of is knowing about that. Think about what you're going to do before you actually do it. And of course, is showing other people about what you can do. It's like knowing about with me, if I were to actually talk about the story, is knowing about knowing about. It's like I know how to work a webcam. Of course, I did not even go really have any type of training. I just pretty much bought whatever I saved my money up for, just bought it, just did the study and did my homework, you say. And of course, talking about is like the story. And it's like what you call is like the things I can actually draw up. Like, this is what I can talk about. I'm going to go ahead and talk about, you say, the story about my childhood, the story about my life is knowing about the things that you're afraid of, is knowing about, is like if it makes you feel better just to talk about them, is like knowing about, is like the things whenever you were a kid. And then, of course, knowing about, it's like, hey, just ask for knowing about, hey, that if it makes you feel better to talk about, maybe help people understand it. But other than that, with me, it's like, for my words of saying and knowing about, it's like with the things I'm afraid about, really, I guess I am afraid of knowing about, if something happens to where if I were to bump my head on the slide or whatever you call it, then, I kind of feel embarrassed in front of all those people is knowing about. It's like if they're going to say if you're all right, or if I'm all right, it is, or if they're going to be like, if they're going to make a big laugh about it. But on the other hand, too, to knowing about with me though is like, hey, that say incidents happen. It is, and then on the other hand, too, that knowing about is like, yeah, that incidents happen, and then you think about it's like, hey, and even though if incidents do happen, it's just knowing about it's like if I'm all right. But it's like the fact is, it's like you begin to wonder maybe why my favorite color a lot of times was blue a lot of times. Maybe because the fact about, blue, 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 blue. And then on the other hand too, that knowing about the, hey, it's like I can show my talent just maybe by drawing it out or maybe by acting it out. Just knowing about, I can, you want to write your name on, say, on the board? I can say, like, if I were to write my name, like talking about, like, Matthew, word, afraid. It's not like, I'm not really afraid. You say to say, it's like, but I'm really afraid of knowing about it. It's like, yeah, that I just think that, people would just laugh at me whenever I start talking about something. But on the other hand, too, that other than my own word is knowing about, it's like, maybe I'm just proud to say, that, I am what you call afraid to say that, knowing about, my word of say of how you say my word of saying like how it's said. It's say in my own words. It's such talking about it's like from Matthew's word afraid.